Hello, all the good people who know me and also for those who don't, and welcome to our first video, the first week of learning DevOps journey. Most of you already know that my name is Dmitry, and I wanted to invite you to this journey where I and hopefully also you will go basically from the zero in all of the DevOps topic to somewhat level, which is definitely higher than a zero. We'll see how this goes, but we came here to learn the new stuff and use it in some practice. It's important to mention that I've worked previously quite a lot with Linux, different distributions, databases, SQL, NoSQL databases, clouds, Docker containers, and so on. But all of the time, most of the stuff I was doing was basically around the operations. And you must agree that the DevOps is somewhat a bridge when operations meet the development. And that part is something I always wanted to do. And also, not a big secret that DevOps is a very trending thing right now. It's very popular, especially for those who like to tinker about some stuff, do some stuff for their home lab, and just work on some random projects. Nowadays, it's very hard to avoid the DevOps topic. And that's why I decided to learn it together with you. So if you're curious about the DevOps but don't really know where to start and what should be the path, you can join me in these video series where we start, as I said, right from the zero, and we will go as far as we can, and hopefully we collect multiple people on a way who are also eager to learn something new. So let's cover the rules, and the rules are very easy. On average, every week I'm going to release a video that's going to cover some sort of objectives, some topics about the DevOps. We're going to start low from the zero, right? And then we're going to grow up with our knowledge and also the complexity of the tasks. I myself am quite a busy guy, and I do believe that you are as well. So we don't have like 8 hours plus time every day in a week to designate for the learning. So on average, one video should take around a couple of hours for you to learn. What is also super important that just to make my learning path a bit smoother and also make my plan to exchange this information with all of you guys easier while I am learning, and before I prepare the video, I do prepare all of these notes on the topics that we cover. And these notes will be visible in the videos itself. They're not a big secret. You can just see everything on a screen, right? You can write down the URLs. There also are some URLs where I find the information and answers for the topics. There are also some commands that we are executing, as example, when we're installing the WSL in this week video. So long story short, you can get everything for free out of this video, but just for your convenience, if you do want to download these files as a PDF and have all the clickable links and copy-paste commands and everything else, all of these files together with the weekly videos are going to go to my Patreon page. And the Patreon is going to be behind a paywall because this takes some time for me to gather all of this information, and I just for some reason don't want to share it like completely for free. And the paywall is just I would say reasonable. It's basically a Starbucks coffee in a month. So the paywall is $5. And since we're starting something new here, it's a new project and we're learning and doing some great stuff, you will also find a discount code below this video on the screen, maybe even in the comments. So that the first time of the Patreon subscription is going to come with 50% discount. So the first month you will get 2.50 to get all of the PDFs, and there should be roughly 4 per month. And then every next month is going to be $5. And you might also ask, but how did you come up with a plan? What's the plan for the week 1, week 2, week 3, 4, and so on? Do we have to apply for some sort of the courses? Will I have to read a book with 200 pages? And there's a simple answer like, no, you will not need to read any books. There are some books here, as example, for DevOps Principles and Culture. We talk about the Phoenix project, but I myself only read a summary, which was a 10-minute summary of the book. If you yourself want to read it fully, go ahead, no objections from my side. And talking about the plan, well, nowadays it would be really a shame if we would not include AI into all of this learning path and topic. So I did ask AI to basically, I've explained my existing skills like proficiency with a Linux databases, CLI, and so on and so on. And I told it I have zero experience with the development. I'm not really a script writer. I'm not so good in a Python and so on and so on. And basically asked, create a path for me, divided into weeks, keeping in mind that after each of the weeks, I'm going to create a video for my community and for my viewers, and I will share with all of this journey. And the plan came up. So we're just starting and we'll see where this goes. So getting us in the first week and the first week objectives, I will say straight up that the first week is more the theory than it is the practice. The only practical stuff that we're actually doing in this week is setting up the basic environment, as example, installing the VS Code, which I might later on replace with the cursor, just because, I don't know, just because it's trending, right? And don't forget that I myself am just a newbie in all of this DevOps stuff, so I'm learning together with you on the way. So we have a VS Code, possibly going to be replaced with a cursor later on. We're installing the WSL just because I'm working on a Windows machine. We're creating the GitHub repository and we're setting up the GitHub repository on our WSL, for which I'm using the Alma Linux. That's the only practical task. But for the theory, we talk about the DevOps toolchain, and it is important that DevOps as such definitely has some specific tools that normal like development and operations not necessarily use during their work, right? There is the DevOps lifecycle, which is also closely aligned with the DevOps culture as a such, and we're going to talk about all of these stuff, DevOps principles and culture, and what is DevOps as such, right? So if you're learning something new, possibly you want to understand what it actually is. So let's slowly start with the first topic, and the first topic, kind of day one, is what a DevOps actually is. How it's structured here, you can see that in the blue boxes, I have sort of objectives like understand what a DevOps culture and methodology is and why DevOps is important in modern technology. And here I had just some hints of where I can gather this information. So basically, I was reading through AWS explanation of what the DevOps is. I was also checking the Google page, and I must say that AWS has much more detailed view on the topic than the Google. And I've also watched just a quick 5-minute video about what the DevOps is. There's plenty of them in the YouTube. And what's important, like what we do learn is, like, as I mentioned in the beginning of this video, the DevOps is pretty much a bridge where development meets the operation. And as much as I learned from this week one, the DevOps culture as such is basically trying to break the gap between, let's say, making things more efficient. Because previously, before there were DevOps as such, there were basically like two parties. There's development, who are responsible to developing the software or toolset or whatever they're working on. And then there are operations who are responsible to rolling everything out, like going in, installing software, setting it up, configuring everything one by one, customer by customer. And then there is coming some sort of the feedback, which might not be great, and there might be required some fixes and whatever. So all of this information is passed then to the development, who then work on the fixes, pass the fixes to the operations, and all of that is extremely inefficient. And that's basically how the DevOps was born. And here we have some of the key takeaways from all of this reading that I did myself. Like, the DevOps is a combination of culture, philosophies, practices, and tools that increases an organization's ability to deliver applications and services at high velocity, evolving and improving products at a faster pace than organizations using traditional software development and infrastructure management processes. This speed enables organizations to better serve their customers and compete more effectively in the market, which is the big goal of everything, right? Make our customers happy and deliver a good product and a good service to the market. The second thing is that these teams use practices to automate the processes that historically have been manual and slow. They use the technology stack and tooling which help them operate and evolve applications quickly and reliably. These tools also help engineers independently accomplish tasks, for example, deploying code or provision infrastructure that normally would have required help from other teams, and this further increases teams' velocity. So let's try to think about this like in the past. Myself, previously when I was doing the technical stuff, like you receive some sort of a task that you need to deploy this software A or software B on these servers and maybe configure some high availability. It's always like dedicated one single customer to one single environment. You just log in, SSH, start typing in the commands, start to configure the services, and basically it's a manual work. And if you would have to do the same task for 5 customers, you would spend like 5x time to do your task. But the logic behind the DevOps is like to automate everything as much as possible, and as we will later see, work on the infrastructure as a code, so that basically all of our deployments can come with single click of the button, no matter if we have 1 customer or 5. And organizations might also use a microservice architecture to make their applications more flexible and enable quicker innovation. The microservices architecture decouples large complex systems into simple independent projects, which also makes the way how you can work on them, like it is much easier to work on a smaller bits, the microservices, instead when you have one super large system which is interconnected, and as soon as you tinker around with one single place and you break something or you change something, it immediately affects everything. While when you're having microservices, everything is like sort of packed in a small little boxes with the correct order. You know where everything is, how it works, how it interconnected, and it makes the work on this much more easier. The main benefits of the DevOps, like why all of this really makes sense, is the speed, is the rapid delivery, is the reliability, scale, and the scale I believe is like one of the most important thing, because we are going away from manually executing some sort of the commands and setting up manually services, applications, whatever, to the scale. When one person with just one project can do no matter how big environments, no matter how big the setups, because everything like the pipeline is already kind of predefined by this DevOps engineers in this case. Improved collaboration, like more efficient teams under a DevOps culture model, which emphasizes ownership and accountability, and also security. Move quickly while retaining control and preserving compliance with automated security and compliance policies. So instead of having someone who goes server by server and checks that everything is configured correctly and well, we basically have a built-in policies in the development process itself, which kind of makes it impossible to do things wrong, right? So we have everything already set up in the code itself to make sure that all the security is taken into account. As for the day 2, we talk about the DevOps principles and culture, and I myself can say that this is like more about not so much about the actual technical people, and you'll definitely, I don't think that you're going to learn anything technical out of this. This is more to some project managers, maybe some delivery managers, some team leads, whatever, because it basically talks about how the DevOps usually work and what are actual processes that you should follow to make everything work around the DevOps team, and why it's good and why it's bad. And all of this came from the book, basically the Phoenix Project. And as I said previously, like I don't have so much time to read the full book myself, so I just read the summary. You can find the video here in the Patreon page again, where you can download all this. You can have the video with the review of the book and explanation of everything, and also like the kind of 10-minute summary of the book itself. So the objectives for this day, this learning step, is like understand the core DevOps principles and importance of culture, feedback loops, and continuous learning. So the book itself, it's basically a novel, fiction kind of, and written by Jen Kim, and it is about it's a story about the Parts Unlimited, which is a fictional company that was going through a serious crisis and was on the verge of collapsing. To save the company, the leadership tried to launch a new project, which is the Phoenix Project, which they hoped would close the gap with the competition. And analyzing the problems and finding solutions, they managed to make the company profitable and bringing it to the new level. But during this, like, there was basically one guy who got promoted and had this objective to lead this new Phoenix project, and everything was just collapsing around. So things are not working definitely good. There was huge amount of the downtime and all of the bad stuff that you can just imagine. But there also was the smart guy, and I think his name was Eric, who basically came up with the 3 ways that changed everything, how the company worked and how they worked around the project. And in the end, everybody were happy. And those are like the 3 ways of the DevOps culture, where the first way concerns the processes between the business and the customer. In particular, it explains how to create a fast flow of work from development into IT operations and then to the customer. According to this principle, to maximize the flow, you need to optimize for global goals. So instead of focusing on local goals like operations availability measures, you'd need to have a bigger picture in mind, which you'd strive for. And the outers provide the following measures to create the fast flow. Basically, it's kind of the measures are coming from here. From the day one, where we can see that the software delivery part is measured by the change lead time, deployment frequency, and change fail percentage, and so on and so on. The second way is about fixing quality at the source in order to avoid the rework. This is possible due to constant flow of fast feedback that helps not make the same mistakes and enable faster detection and recovery of problems. A feedback loop, so-called, should go from the earliest parts of product definition, design, and development. This way, the quality is created at the source. The practices necessary to apply the second way are like stopping the production line when builds and tests fail in the deployment pipeline, or the second example, like constantly improve daily work, create a better cooperation between development and IT operations, shared goals and shared pain, create a production telemetry to make sure the code and environments work properly and that the customer's requirements are satisfied. Third way, the final way, shows how to create a culture that fosters experimentation, learning from failure, and understanding that repetition and practice are the prerequisites to mastery. The practices necessary to create such a culture are as follows: be open to innovation and risk-taking instead of blindly taking orders, and allocating at least 20% of development and IT operation cycles towards non-functional requirements, encouraging and celebrating improvements. There's also like the visual explanation of all the 3 ways. The first way, flow, feedback, and continual experimentation and learning. So with all of the interaction between the development, operations, and finished solution, which usually also means the customer. And the day 3 of our learning week was designated to the DevOps lifecycle. You can find a lot of visual things about it, and I did use this mainly because right next to the lifecycle itself, which is like build, test, deploy, run, monitor, and manage, notify is not present in many other examples that I found myself. But what I did like the most in this picture is that for each lifecycle step, it also has the usual toolset. As example, for build, what we usually use is like Git or Bitbucket or Gitbucket or GitHub or GitLab and so on. For testing, or for CI, there's Jenkins and TeamCity, whatever, right? This is definitely going to be helpful for us later on when we decide on what kind of tools we use for which tasks. And the objective here was like really easy: learn about all of the stages and how they interconnect. So for the building, we create something, right? Then before the actual deployment, we run the tests, and tests are again not a manual testing. We do have tools, as example Selenium for the web browser things, if we will have them in some weeks. So we run all of the auto tests to make sure that the stuff that we just built actually works, it's not broken, everything is fine. Then we do the deployment, and deployment can be done. I believe the first thing that we're actually going to do is going to be the Terraform. We're definitely also use the HashiCorp Vault for the security. Those are kind of industry standards, I believe, and it's hard to go with the DevOps without touching like those 2 things. Possibly also gonna touch Ansible, most likely. We'll see, right? Then how to run everything, as example, as a Docker containers, Kubernetes, and I also very, very much want to dig into the Kubernetes, so that's for the next weeks to come. Monitor, well, it would be a shame if in this channel we would not at least try to use Zabbix. I'm not saying that we will able to do everything with it in our journey. So if there will be some of the tasks where we can see that, okay, there's some different tools that are more convenient and easier to set up than Zabbix, then we'll definitely go somewhere else. So we'll try with a Zabbix, but I'm quite sure that very often we will also use something from the Grafana, possibly the Prometheus, especially if we're going to talk about some log monitoring and log aggregation and so on, then very possible that the Zabbix is not going to be enough. But what I can say right away, we probably not going to use some costly, expensive paid tools as Datadog, as example. Just notice it here. As far as it goes for the manage, like this is something we need to know, right? We know that there is such lifecycle step where we usually have some events and alerts. We have the service desk, project management, as example, the Jira and CRM help desk, but it's not exactly something we're going to need in our lab environment. Like there's not going to be, at least I don't plan to have some tickets or some CRM, God help, and stuff like that. I myself am going to use Miro. I'm not sure how to pronounce it correctly in English. I've even upgraded to the paid tier just to make sure that I can export all of these boards that I create on a way to PDFs with the highest quality. And Miro uses some nasty way how to get the paid customers, because you can get like 3 boards for free, which would normally be sufficient. And the export to PDF option is available also in the free tier, but only in the low quality. And looking for you guys in the low quality, I did notice that the quality is as low that it's hard to understand some of the stuff. So yeah, I did pay for the paid one just to make sure that all of the PDFs are exported in a high quality, which you can find in a Patreon page, link in the description. So about all of the life cycles, basically for the plan, the first phase is the planning phase, and in this stage, developers, leads, and architects will be having continuous meetings and discussions with the product owners, business owners to understand the business and product requirements and finalize the product roadmap. Usually, all planning activities will occur before actual coding begins. Well, for me and also for you, this is going to be a little bit easier step, right? We don't have a team of product owners and business owners to talk with. We just have some sort of the tasks and possibly also some ideas how we want to do these things, and we'll just move on. Source code, developer will start the actual coding based on all the requirements. Typically, the development team will write a code using an integrated development environment and languages including Go, Python, Java. In order to maintain the code, tools such as GitHub, GitLab, Bitbucket, or Stash are used for version control. So I myself am using GitHub, and if we're going to touch some sort of the scripting, I'm sure we're going to go with Python. For build step, fetch the source code from the different repositories, some from our GitHub in this case, and combine them to build the packages for the release to the production. Developers can use Gradle, Maven, and similar tools to package the code into executable files. Code review, integration testing, unit testing, SonarQube, performance tests, health checks will be part of the code building process. Then the testing, as I mentioned previously, so just running all bunch of automated tests. Now, performance tests, testing the front end, the browser with the Selenium and so on, making sure that everything is actually working. And when we're very much confident with all of the stuff that we're doing, then we're doing the release. And release phase is the stage in the life cycle of DevOps where code will be ready to be deployed in the environment, like UAT staging, or the pre-prod. Based on the organization to organization, the approval process will be gradually by different personnel for the approval process. Deploy, finalized application code will be deployed to the pre-prod production server. Configuration management is the key process at this stage. It executes the precise deployment of application code on all of the server, establishes and manages the consistency of application performance and functional conditions, publish the code to the server, schedule the updates for all of the servers, and keep these configurations consistent throughout the production process. For operate, Once the application is deployed, the operations team will perform activities such as infrastructure changes, configuration, capacity, and resource management, security check, data backup, log backup, database management, and so on and so on. And for monitor, well, when everything is deployed and our customers are starting to use this, and in our cases, we probably are not going to have customers, at least not in the beginning. So it's mostly just ourselves clicking around the project that we're working on while we're still monitoring it and looking on all of the data, just to make sure that we will not need to make any adjustments further on. The next step is the DevOps toolchain overview. And as you notice here, there's like a bunch of different tools, and we're definitely not going to try all of them, and we not even need all of them. So it always comes with a choice. What do we plan to use? Why? Which comes up from depending on what kind of task we have. So kind of like I've made a choices that I can right now for planning. As example, I'm gonna use Miro. Again, not sure how to pronounce it. Just because I can draw everything, it's convenient for me to make some text notes. I can copy paste screenshots. I can throw in some URLs. I can draw diagrams, and what's most important, I can export everything in a PDF and share with you guys. If I will need some personal write-downs that I'm not going to plan to share with you for just some ideas for this project and so on, I'll probably use Obsidian for the notes, just because I'm using it already for quite some time. For develop plan, I'll be using GitHub for source control and collaboration throughout this journey. It's, well, because it's one of the industry standards for versioning code and integrates well with other tools. Well, I'll explore later, like CI/CD pipelines. For build, to be honest, I have no idea so far. I guess this depends on what kind of tasks I will set for myself and for you guys, and what kind of technology stack it will include, because I have a suspicion right now that, let's say, if we're going to go with a Kubernetes in some practicals, then we'll have to use one toolset for the build. And if those are going to be some individual virtual machines as examples, then it's going to be something else. For testing, very much depends on what task will be given and what we're actually going to be building. We're going to decide on the fly. For release, I do want to explore the Argo CD, but again, this is also like once we have the week when we have some real, tangible, practical tasks to create and develop something, then we will see what exactly the tool set is going to be that we're going to use. For deployment, GitHub Actions, just because we have GitHub for the development part. And again, I do believe that's quite industry standard. For operate part, I definitely do want to explore Kubernetes, containers, containerization, everything in that. So I'm very much confident we're going to jump into Kubernetes. The only thing is that very likely that in the beginning, in the first weeks, where we want to ramp up the complexity of all of this learning path, like gradually, probably we're not going to go with the bare metal Kubernetes in the first weeks. I do plan to use AWS, so very likely we're going to use EKS for that. And for the monitoring, as I said, like where it will be possible, we're going to use this Zabbix, but as soon as we have some task where we clearly see that, okay, this tool would save us a lot of time, we're not going to hesitate and we're going to switch to that other tool. Which gets us to the last day of the first week and of the first video, which is the actual environment setup. Like I myself, actually, I do have this like couple of months plan ahead, but I did not go through all of the tasks that we'll have further on. So I made some choices based on what I already know. So we had the requirements to install the VS Code. As I said, I might change that or at least accompany that with a cursor later on. We had to install a Git. We had to install the WSL version 2, create a GitHub repository, and make our first commit to our GitHub repo, which basically was the README file. As far as it goes for installing the VS Code, I will throw in some videos as overlays in this part, but basically it's straight up super easy. What you need to do is to proceed to VS Code download section from the link here. Oops, let me move this back. There we go. And you just download the installer, a couple of next. There are not so many different options that you need to choose. And after that, the VS Code, you can open it. I did not do any configuration in the VS Code itself yet, because we didn't have any actual coding projects so far. So all of the settings at this step are completely default. Just install and that's it. Installing the WSL, that was a little bit trickier than installing the VS Code. Here you can find the commands, how to actually do that. You first of all open the PowerShell. What's super important is to open it with administrator rights. And then we try to install WSL with just install a node distribution, because by default it suggests you to use Ubuntu. I don't like Ubuntu. I'm more of a Red Hat people, right? So I decided I want to go with Alma Linux. And as I was guided in some of the sources I was reading, like if this doesn't work, then you just need to enable features for WSL. So you need, if this doesn't work, install node distribution, then you need to execute these two commands. Then it's also was important to set the default version to the version 2 for WSL, and then you need to restart your computer. If none of this works, it's also very possible that if you don't have experience with setting up some virtual machines on your computer as such, maybe you don't have the virtualization even enabled in your BIOS settings of your computer. So then go on, make a restart, enter to the BIOS and enable the virtualization, then log in, execute all the commands. When you've got this far till set default version 2, you again need to make the restart, make sure that all of the changes are applied. Then you're free to go WSL list online. So kind of check, there's a typo, install, kind of check what kind of distributions are available online, and Alma Linux 9 is available. So just WSL install Alma Linux 9. This took, I think, around like 2 minutes. And after that, when you open WSL, when you create like a new tab, you can have Alma Linux 9 option available. For GitHub repository, it's straightforward. I'm kind of sure that most of you already have this experience, but basically you need to go to the github.com. If you don't have an account there, then just sign up. If you do, then just log in. For these training purposes, I created a new repository completely. I've chosen it to be private, and now I'm actually, for the last day, thinking about it. Maybe it's going to be easier to make it public. Just because further on, when we're actually going to be cloning the repository in our Alma Linux machine, it will prompt you to provide the username and a password. But the password happens to be deprecated for quite some time. I think it's like 4 years or something. So you actually need to create a token. And tokens can be created in the github.com settings tokens page. Yeah, so you create a token, you assign the permissions. It's kind of like an API token, and you set up the expiration period. Then you get your token, you copy paste it, use it to clone the repository, and then that's it. You will not be able to see it again, so you need to store it somewhere. I'm sure there is a way how to store it in the Alma Linux or HashiCorp or whatever, but so far we did not explore this option. And if you would go with a public project, then you would not have this problem, right? Because there's no need to authenticate. Maybe only in the comments, but not sure. So when that's done, setting up the Git, opening WSL Linux virtual machine, and let's run the following commands. So I did open my Alma Linux 9 here, and what we're doing, dnf install git, because by default it's not there. It is on my Windows machine, but we're working on a Linux environment. Then we're cloning this new repository that we just created, no matter if it's private or public. Then we're moving to the repository, creating a directory for the week 1, navigating inside a week 1, creating a new file, the readme.md, and doing the git add This stage adds all the changes for the next commit. Then we're doing the actual commit by adding also the message, like adding first test, and then we're pushing to the origin main. And after this command, your newly created file is also going to be available in the GitHub repository if you will just open it from the browser, which basically gets us to the finish of week 1, which, as I warned in the beginning, is more a theory with just the preparation steps. And the next video is probably be already some smaller project on the hands-on experience. All of this is pretty much also new to me. It's very difficult and different to learn by myself and on the fly also try to pass this information to you, because I definitely don't feel like skilled enough to act as a teacher and all of that. That's why I'm making all of these notes while I'm learning myself. Please let me know, what do you think? What maybe should be different? What could make your learning easier? Are these handbooks handy for you? And don't forget that you can see them all for free in the video itself. But if you want to download them as a PDF and store week over week, you can find them in my Patreon. $5 to access them, and since we're starting something new, there's a 50% discount code. Again, I'm gonna post it somewhere here or in the comments or whatever, so go sign it up. Let's learn together. Let's try to create some interesting things. See you guys later in the next video.